Wednesday evening, May 21st, 2020. Their guest was right on time. Since she received the call the day before, Ronnie was filled with interest. She knew the woman slightly. She was her third relative after all. But they hardly ever met, except at family gatherings. The fact that she was a solicitor deepened the enigma. Her spouse was a lawyer, and she asked him if he knew her professionally. "Hardly," he said. "She practices in another district, so we seldom cross paths. She works solo, doesn't have partners, and does everything she can to cover the bills, including family law. I can tell you she is well regarded." Veronica escorted her into the den and noticed how uneasy she was. After the catching up and family was out of the way, she got right to the point. "Ronnie, Phil, you must be wondering what's going on. Your dad contacted me almost 2 years ago about using me for some work he wanted done. Phil, I know you're his solicitor of record, and you will continue to be. Nothing will change that." The woman, an attractive blonde in her early 50s, looked like she had tears in her eyes. "This is the toughest thing I've ever been asked to do, but you don't refuse kin, so I assisted him. Everything will be explained in the DVDs I have. The first one you'll watch was made the day before yesterday. All the rest are a good bit older. I'll be here while you view them in case you have inquiries. I'm sure you will, and I'm sure you'll understand why I requested that your children not be here tonight." She handed Phil a small stack of discs, each one labeled, and murmured to him. He nodded and came back with beverages for all three and a box of tissues. He picked up the one marked Veronica and Phil and inserted it into the player. Her father's face filled the screen. He was smiling. "Ronnie, Phil, hi. Phil, don't take me getting Ann to do this as a slight to you, and after I explain, I'm sure you'll understand." He paused and took a breath. "You guys know that for the last year and a half I've been seeing a physician. What you don't know is why." He paused again, obviously fighting his emotions. Ronnie felt an impending sense of dread. She had never seen her father so emotional. "There isn't a gentle way to say this. Almost 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I went to the doctor because I was depressed and thought that was what was causing me to be so forgetful. You didn't notice because at the beginning it was slight and I could blame it on my age. As it got worse, I came around less and less, hoping you wouldn't notice. The medications helped for a while, but it progressed, and now my doctors have agreed it has entered the second stage. I have to give up my driver's license and they urge me to look into assisted living. I've made the arrangements, but I want to clear up a few things before I go." He lowered his head for a few seconds before continuing. Ronnie felt the tears start. She sensed something was off, but with 2 teenage girls, her job. Especially this time of year, as she owned an accounting firm and tax season had just ended, and his assurances he was fine. She had let it go. He looked up at the camera. "Don't be mad at me for telling you like this. I just needed to make sure I got it right. And with this, it helps me ensure I'm clear. Plus, I'll still be around, and I expect all my kids to come and see me as often as they can while I can still remember them." He stared intensely at the camera for a moment. "When you, Joy, and Junior come to see me, I'm only going to ask for one thing. When it gets worse, when I can't remember who you are and lose the ability to speak, I want you to stop coming. I won't know, and the thought of you staring at an empty husk would be too much to bear. Try to keep your memories of me happier. Remember when I asked you guys to give my doctor a DNA sample? I told you it was for research on a genetic trait that was almost exclusive to our family. What I was actually doing was having you tested to see if you were predisposed to Alzheimer's. After all, it is genetic. Well, 2 out of 3 are safe, but you, Ronnie, you're at risk. Phil, make sure she has a physical once a year. Progress is being made daily in the search for a cure and treatments, and it is my sincere hope it never happens, but if it does, the quicker she starts treatment, the better the quality of life you'll have." The pain in his voice was very evident. He drew a deep breath. "Now for the hard part. The reason Junior and Joy aren't at risk is they're not biologically my children. They don't have the same father either. I have no idea who Junior's biological father is, but I'm pretty sure that Josh Randall is the father of Joy." They had to turn off the player because Ronnie was sobbing into her husband's chest. Soon Ann joined them, tears streaming down her face. It was 20 minutes before Ronnie could regain her composure. "Would you like me to leave?" Ann asked gently. "You could just call me later if you have questions." Ronnie gripped her hands firmly. "Please stay. I'm sure I'll have a million questions." How much longer is the video? This one, about 30 more minutes or so. There are private messages for you, your brother, your sister, both your spouses, and one for Joy's roommate. And lastly, there is one for your mother. Are you up to continuing? Ronnie nodded, and they settled back onto the couch as Phil turned the player back on. You can't imagine how shocked and hurt I was to learn this. It took me a few days to process my emotions. In the end, as far as you kids were concerned, it didn't matter. You're still all my children. I raised you, I loved you, and I'll still be proud when you call me Dad. You can't undo a lifetime of love based on a few lines of a chart. I pray they feel the same way. But Ronnie, despite how I feel about you guys, when it came to your mother, I admit it changed my feelings for her. I had a little investigation done and didn't like the results, so I changed my will. You and Anne are my executors of the new will I had Anne draft. We tried to cover every contingency, but you never know. Ronnie, the fact that you alone are biologically mine has nothing to do with it. I named you because you were always the strong one. You're the one I trust to do the right thing. Junior has always favored his mother, and I was okay with that. Admit it, he's the most tender-hearted person we know. And Joy is still young, and I'm sure my revelations will hurt her deeply. You have to have the strength she needs to lean on. Help her. You know how much I love the mountains, and I found a nice place specializing in my condition there. Mountain Pines Assisted Living. The arrangements have been made and the finances taken care of. I want you and all the kids to come see me next weekend after I've settled in. I'm looking forward to it. But before I go, me and Elvis are going trout fishing. I'm taking my tent. I haven't done that in years. My last hurrah, so to speak. I love you, Ronnie, all of you. I'll see you soon. After a few additional tears, the questions began. Well, Uncle, how come? I found out almost as soon as he did. He surprised me by showing up at my house. Once we were settled, he handed me a $100 bill. What's this for? Anne, I want to retain your services. I usually use my son-in-law, but what I'm doing is extremely confidential, and I don't want any of my family discovering it. Will you assist me? I felt like I might regret it, but I agreed. I was right. You can ask my spouse how many times I returned home over the next few weeks with a tear-streaked face. As I helped him, my admiration grew. Here was a man facing a terrible future, and his first priority was to ensure his family wouldn't suffer. I can't say I agreed with everything he had me do, and I actually persuaded him out of a few things. One thing he emphasized: you are not to tell your mother or your siblings until he personally says you can. He wanted you to know sooner so you could prepare for the storm. Look, it's getting late, and you've got a lot to consider. Come by Saturday evening. We'll fire up the grill and let my spouse roast something. He's very good at that. Then we'll start on the paperwork. On Monday of that week, 3 days before Anna met with his daughter Ronnie, David Childers sat in his old, worn recliner, the one that was so cozy he just couldn't get rid of despite his wife's complaints. He was gazing at his wife of 31 years. She sensed his gaze and looked up. What? She said with slight annoyance, her usual tone. Just reflecting, 31 years together, a milestone for this day and age. Did you ever regret choosing me, a farmer, over your other suitors? Especially Ed. I think that man was born in a suit. Bet he's never had a dirty hand in his life. He noticed her eyes tighten a bit. She waited a few moments before responding. No, I don't regret choosing you. I'll admit I wish you'd have dressed up a little more frequently, taken me out a little more often than you did, but that's history. I chose you, and I don't regret it. He persisted. You sure? I know I haven't been a very good partner lately with being ill and all. We haven't been intimate in almost a year since I got sick. Don't you miss it? He could tell she was uneasy with the topic. Relax, dear. A nice dinner at a good restaurant pleases me more now than drinks and dancing, and we're in our 60s. That urge has been absent for a while now. He smiled. Thank you, love, that means a lot. He shifted the topic. Darling, will you do something for me? A bit hesitant because of the previous discussion, she didn't agree right away. What do you need? He grinned. It's trout season. I'm taking Elvis with me and staying the night at the state park. Will you make some of your pimento cheese and a batch of brownies for me to bring? It seems like I catch more when you do. She smiled affectionately. Sure thing. Are you up for a trip? He had kept his condition from her as best he could. It was fairly easy, actually, since she often ignored him. When she did, he attributed his forgetfulness to a sleep disorder and insomnia. He had even moved out of their bedroom, claiming he didn't want to disturb her with his tossing and turning. She was fine with it. Saturday evening, 5:14-20. Ronnie and Phil, Anne and her husband Jerry, were standing on the patio enjoying the late spring breeze while the meat cooked. There was little conversation, each lost in their own thoughts. Anne got another round of beers and settled back into her chair. "Did you watch the DVDs?" Despite trying to maintain a brave front, Ronnie burst into tears immediately. "Yes, after discussing it, Phil and I had Junior, his wife Jane, Joy, and her roommate Sydney come over last night. I let them watch the cover DVD first, and then gave each of them their own. I watched them first, as instructed. Joy didn't take it well. She had just come out of the hospital at 3. She was treated for shock and a nervous breakdown. Junior went very quiet, then started ranting about it being a pack of lies. Jane took him home and called me later. She had to give him a sleeping pill and he was still ranting and tossing in bed. I bet she didn't get any sleep last night." Anne hadn't anticipated revealing the DVDs so soon, but everything was set and solid. Phil had reviewed them and praised her work, thanking her for handling it, acknowledging how much of a conflict of interest it would have been if he had prepared it himself. He had tears in his eyes as he recounted his video. "I didn't realize my father-in-law thought so highly of me. He thanked me for being a good husband and father and apologized for putting us in this situation. It made me very sad and regret not spending more time with him. He emphasized the importance of Ronnie and me being the family's anchors now. Thank you, Anne. I know you probably didn't expect this much involvement in our lives, and we'll try to minimize it." Jerry stood with his arm around Anne. A quiet man by nature, the depth of the betrayal he witnessed had deeply affected him. "If you need anything at all, call us. It doesn't matter what day or time, just call. It's too heavy a burden to bear alone." Anne hugged him tightly, silently grateful for the man he was. "Now that everyone knows, Ronnie, what's your plan?" Ronnie sat up straighter, letting some of her anger show. "Not everyone knows. Our dear mother is in for quite a shock down the line. We're all going as a family tomorrow to visit Dad at his assisted living facility, to see if he has anything he wants to add, and to show him some love. I think he needs that right now." Saturday morning, 5:14-11. David felt the tug on his sleeve that Saturday morning. "All right, Elvis, I'm awake. Way too early for a Saturday if you ask me, but you're right, Trout waits for no one. Give me a minute and I'll make breakfast." He sat up, appreciating the frame he'd bought for his double air mattress. It made getting out of bed much easier. He rested his head in his hands for a moment. He'd had a rough night, waking up in the woods with no clue how to get back to the campsite. If Elvis hadn't been there, he'd probably still be lost. The episodes were becoming more frequent. He prepared breakfast quietly while Elvis watched, keeping a close eye on the bacon. With the dishes cleaned, he packed a small lunch in his fishing gear, grabbed his rod, and glanced over at Elvis. "I'm going to catch that big one at Baker's Point today, Elvis. I can feel it. Ready to go?" Elvis, eager and excited, led the way. Friday night, 5:13-20. Sydney held Joy's hand firmly, offering reassurance. "Calm down, babe. It's probably nothing." Joy clung to Sydney, seeking strength from the woman she loved. "I can't calm down. This has to be bad news. What if they know about us? What if they disapprove? The secrecy is killing me." Sydney sighed, remembering how many times they'd gone over this. "Look, when we came out to my mom last year, she didn't freak out. She might have been a bit disappointed about not having grandkids, but she's always liked you. She was happy for us. When we told her we wanted to adopt after college, and once we were established in our careers, it sealed the deal." Her eyes became serious. "And if they don't approve, we'll wear them down. But honestly, it's not as big a secret as you think. I get the feeling your dad knows, even though he's never mentioned it. Your brother and sister aren't idiots. They must suspect. I think the only one worried is you. Now relax. I'm sure this doesn't have anything to do with you." She would often reflect over the next year how she wished she had been right. Junior and Jane were already there, so they started the meal. Everyone was intrigued by the almost urgent need for everyone to be present. Ronnie simply said it was an important family business. When they finally settled in the living room, Ronnie had deflected their questions during dinner. She surprised them all by hugging each of them in turn. She turned to Junior and Joy, looking into their faces. "What I'm about to show you will hurt deeply. There's nothing I can do about that. What I can assure you is that no matter what you see, I'm still your sister, and I love you dearly." She played the original DVD first. Soon everyone in the room was in tears. Ronnie handed Joy her video, offering her the privacy of their oldest daughter's room to watch it. As instructed by their father, Joy watched every one of the DVDs. 5 minutes later, a scream pierced through the house, sounding like a wounded animal. They rushed upstairs to find Joy curled into a fetal position, moaning. They had to call an ambulance, and she was treated for shock, sedated, and kept overnight. Once it was clear there was nothing more they could do, they returned to Ronnie's place. The hospital assured them she would wake around 8. Sydney stayed behind. Junior remained motionless in his niece's room long after the video ended. Jane eventually went in and gently guided him out, promising she would get him to the hospital by 8 and watch her video at home. By then it was almost 2 in the morning. Ronnie and Phil collapsed into bed, utterly exhausted. Saturday morning, 5 to 14:20. Sydney was dozing when Joy woke up. She stirred, trying to piece together what had happened. Her limbs moved fine, and she didn't feel any lumps or bruises. She touched the locket her dad had given her, and the memories flooded back. Joy's wail woke Sydney, who quickly wrapped her in her arms and rocked her like a baby, shooing away the nurses and doctors. Soon, the rest of the family arrived and took turns comforting her until she calmed down. Joy asked for a moment alone with Ronnie. After 30 minutes they emerged, and Joy announced she would spend the night with Sydney and her mom. They agreed to meet at Junior's place the next morning to visit their dad. When Sydney's mom heard about David, she hugged Joy tightly. That poor man, he was always so strong, not the flashy look-at-me kind of strong, but like a tree, solid and dependable. You always felt safe with him around. Saturday afternoon, 5:14:20. Jane watched her husband intently. She had never seen him so subdued. Normally loud and rowdy in a cheerful way, he was now silent. She rubbed her pregnant belly for comfort. 5 months along with a baby girl, this pregnancy had brought them great joy, especially as a surprise addition to their family. At 36, with 2 boys already aged 15 and 13, this situation was particularly hard on them. She had always admired her father-in-law. Her mother-in-law, on the other hand, had always seemed distant and cold. The children adored their grandfather, making this situation even more painful. I hope he does something about how poorly she's treated him all these years. She deserves it. She kept her thoughts to herself, though she had never vocalized it. She always felt that her husband had been somewhat of a mama's boy. Jane definitely did not want to get involved in the turmoil. When the boys came home from their other grandparents' house, Junior surprised them with a tight hug. The boys were taken aback. "Gee, Dad, you're acting like someone died. Are you okay?" For the first time in hours, Junior spoke. "No, son," he said, ruffling his oldest's hair, a gesture he knew was always a bit annoying. "I've received some very sad news, and I'm still trying to process it." He then hugged Jane so tightly that he lifted her off the ground. For the first time in 24 hours, he seemed somewhat back to his old self. Jane, however, dreaded the next day, as she had always been apprehensive about nursing homes. Saturday morning, 5:14:20. Baker's Point was named after one of the first settlers in the area, and the family owned the land at one time. The state had owned it for 40 years, developing a park and campground. There was hiking, swimming, boating, and especially fishing. It was an actual point, a sheer knob of granite that extended out from the mountains into a point less than 3 feet wide. From there it dropped off 90 feet, where the headwaters of the river flowed by in typical fashion. An 80-foot run that dropped about 4 feet, strewn with rocks the size of marbles up to the size of cars, before making a turn at the point and widening into a large pool. David had just hiked up from the pool and was sitting there gasping a little, just where the point leaves the mountain. Elvis, I can remember when I could run up here and not be out of breath. Elvis looked at him like he was smiling, David noticed. Don't think I forgot. What were you thinking? I almost had him. I bet he weighed 15 pounds. That's a monster around here. I wasn't going to keep him. I just wanted to hold him once before I let him go. I almost had him in the net when you jumped in the water and broke the line. He looked over at Elvis, admiring him. He wasn't a perfect specimen. He had a crooked tooth that made his lip curl into a snarl, and it reminded him of a picture of a young Elvis, so he gave him that name. He was from the last litter of boxers he had bred and was one of the biggest, weighing over 70 pounds. He caught his breath and set out 2 small bowls. He put water in one and a can of dog food in the other. He usually fed him dry, giving him a can once in a while as a treat. He took the long leash he had brought, clipped it to his collar, and tied it to a small tree. It was long enough to reach him as he unwrapped his lunch, and he bumped his head into his shoulder until he lifted his arm, and Elvis slid underneath. He watched mournfully as David unwrapped his sandwich, whining softly. Elvis, I get you a gourmet can of food, and you're trying to steal my meal. What kind of fare is that? Still, he tore the sandwich in half and gave it to him. Here, bud, I owe you this. I want to apologize and thank you, first for forgetting you for 2 days. 2 days. His voice shook with shame. For 2 days you stood in your lot without food or water, yet when I remembered and came for you, all you wanted for the first minute or 2 was my attention. That's where the thank you part comes in. You made me realize it was time for me to stop pretending and do something. He paused to rub behind his ears, knowing he loved it. Did I ever tell you why I kept you instead of the others? You were butt ugly and dumb as a rock, for one thing, but the decision was loyalty. That's something I've come to value lately. It didn't matter if it was 10 degrees or 100, if it was pouring rain and a high wind, or if it was a blizzard outside. If I went out, you wanted to go too. He patted the dog one more time. Saturday afternoon, 5:14 to 20. Hank and Mary Travers were huffing and puffing, trying to keep up with their 12-year-old daughter as she ran laughing up the trail. Both raised in a large city, they looked for jobs in smaller towns, looking for a better place to raise their children and have a house with a big yard. Beth came to them late. They had just about given up trying when she came along. They learned to love the outdoors and camped as often as they could. They would regale friends at parties with their fiasco stories of their first attempt, but had become so proficient they were sought out as chaperones when Beth's Girl Scout troop went on their annual trips. Beth heard the dog barking long before she saw it. When she topped the trail, she saw the big dog, tangled in his chain underneath the tree. An old man was sitting there, apparently ignoring the barking. Something didn't look right, and she waited for her parents. When they got to the top, Beth went up to the man and shook him gently. Mister, are you all right? He was passive for a minute when he suddenly started. Gradually, the little girl came into focus. When she saw him staring, she repeated the question. She remembered his reply her whole life, especially if she was in the mountains. No, child, I'm not. Do you think your parents will walk me back to the campground? And if you would, unclip my dog and let him run while we untangle his leash. He won't hurt you. His name is Elvis, and the worst thing that could happen would be him attempting to lick you to death. She looked at her dad, and he nodded. She called his name and petted him for a minute before taking the leash off the collar. After being unable to take more than a few steps for hours, he immediately took off down the trail, burning off some pent-up energy. She called after him, but the old man said to leave him. He'd be right back. He was stiff when her mom and dad helped him up. Her dad advised him to walk around a bit to limber up his muscles. The old man walked to the end of the point and looked down, then up. David walked to the end of the point. He looked down at the water, then up at the sky. If the nice young family hadn't happened by, it may have been morning before he came back to himself. He turned to go back to the trail when Mary Travers screamed. Elvis had come back up the trail at a dead run, saw his master, and leapt straight into his arms at full speed. It knocked him completely off the point. Luckily, the little girl was busy untangling the leash and didn't witness it. She called 911. There was a signal on the point, and soon the Rangers and EMTs arrived. It was too late. David looked upwards as he fell and had just enough time to mouth, "Thank you," and with his last thought, hurled Elvis into the pool. He popped up and immediately ran back to David, licking his face and whining. The Rangers had to shoot him with tranquilizers to get him to stop defending the body 2 hours later. Sunday morning, 5 to 16:20. Juanita Childers walked through her front door with a happy smile on her face. She'd just spent a great night with her younger lover. They'd made plans for their future together once she divorced David and got most of his assets. She was going to retire, and he was going to quit his job. The affair had been going on for over 20 years. She thought about David, frowning. He was so nice, so gullible. He never suspected she was sleeping with other people. It had started less than 2 years after they were married, 40 years ago, with their banker. After that fizzled out, she hooked up randomly, carefully, always covering her tracks until she met Josh. It would be awful for David. It would be like clubbing baby seals. He might not ever recover, but as Josh often said, there's always got to be a loser. As she laid her purse down, she noticed her answering machine was full, 30 messages. Odd. It reminded her to turn on her cell phone, and she noticed her message board was full. Wonder what was going on. Most were from Ronnie and Phil. God, what an insufferable jerk. He was. She wondered what she saw in him sometimes. She checked the last message. She heard Phil's voice. Juanita, when you hear this, you need to call me or Ronnie. David was in a serious accident yesterday, and you need to get to Highlands Medical just as soon as you can. Please let us know you got your message as soon as possible. She was immediately concerned. Even if she didn't love him, she didn't want him to come to harm. She called Ronnie. Where the hell have you been with Josh Randall? Get your ass up here right now, you jerk. Her head reeled. Ronnie knew. God, she hoped she hadn't told David. She had to get up there right away, try to get a handle on the situation. She called Josh on the way out the door. Josh, David's been in an accident. I knew I should have left the phone on last night. Worse yet, somehow Ronnie knows about us. I'm on the way to the hospital. Keep an ear out for your phone. Try to answer it before your wife does. It might be a good idea to turn it off today. I'll call back as soon as I know more. She could hear the near panic in his voice. She can't know now. It would mess up all our plans. Call me as soon as you can. As he disconnected, it struck her he never asked about David. She had a wicked thought she tried to suppress. What if he died? It would move their plans up, and she would end up with all his assets instead of just most. She parked in the hospital lot, checking her hair in the mirror. Damn, she wished she'd had the presence of mind to change clothes. She had on her party dress, her seamed hose, black 4-inch pumps, all things she kept hidden in a closet of one of the spare bedrooms. She exercised regularly, was trim, colored her hair, and she looked 10 years younger than her actual age. Ronnie met her in the lobby, her face set in hard lines of anger and pain. There was no greeting. She looked her mother over, noticing the dress, and her face got even harder. About time, Cinderella. Did you have a good time at the ball last night? Maybe win the prize for biggest cheater? Juanita stepped back from her daughter, thinking she might actually strike her. Mind your tongue, young lady. How dare you speak to me like that? Ronnie looked her up and down. Well, Mom, if the come-take-me pumps fit, I guess you should wear them. Her blush deepened. Ronnie was still at full volume and people were starting to stare. She took her arm, which she immediately shook off. Don't touch me, you liar. Juanita lost it and slapped her. She stood horrified. What had she done? Ronnie rubbed her cheek before she spoke again. Thanks, jerk. I needed to calm down. The whole world doesn't need to know our dirty business. Come with us. Phil had appeared at her side, and if looks could kill, Juanita would be on the floor. She could feel the anger in his body. They turned and headed down a hall to a small office, stopping at the door. Go in there. They'll give you the information on Dad's condition since you were so concerned you haven't even asked me once. They literally shoved her through the door. Juanita stood before a woman who looked harried and tired. She looked up from her desk. May I help you? Please take a seat. Juanita sat gingerly. Josh took her hard last night, and she let him so infrequently she was sore. She smiled at the memory. Juanita stared at the woman for a second. Yes, I hope so. I'm here to inquire about David Childers. Where is he? What's his condition? How soon can I see him? I was, out of town last night and didn't get the message. I came as soon as I could. The woman fished through her files and looked up, frowning. She called someone, and soon there was a doctor in the office. They both looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Childers, I'm afraid you got some bad information. Your husband isn't in the hospital." The doctor paused for a minute. He had always hated this part. "Ma'am, I'm sorry to tell you that your husband passed yesterday afternoon in a hiking accident, according to the report. Arrangements were made by your daughter to transport him back to your local funeral home. I thought your children told you they were all here by midnight last night." Juanita let out a small moan before she slumped down in the chair. The doctor checked her over, before summoning a nurse and instructing her to find the family. She came back with a note from Ronnie. "You didn't need us when he was alive. I see no reason for us to be around now. If it was up to me, I'd tell you to call Josh and have him comfort you. But Junior is in the lobby waiting on you." Jane drove their car home. That was it. Junior picked her up and drove her back home, refusing to speak or listen to her the whole way. Jane was waiting in the driveway. She didn't come into the house. Juanita noticed. "Don't care about them all. They'll come to me after the will is read, hands out. Let's see how they treat me then." Thursday afternoon, 5/19/20. It was a funeral the small town talked about for years. David was well liked, and the small church overflowed. They all remembered the visitation, where Juanita sat on one side with the older grandchildren around her, and the siblings sat on the other. The line was long and the mood somber until Josh Randall appeared, hugged Juanita, and went over towards the children. Joy came up in a rage. "You jerk, you actually have the nerve to come here? Get out, now, or I'll tell secrets." His face turned bright crimson and he practically ran out. It took 3 men to constrain Junior. Juanita fainted. The same odd grouping occurred at the funeral. Juanita rode in a limo with the 3 oldest grandchildren, while the siblings and their spouses rode in a limo together. Sydney escorted Joy to the door of the limo and turned away, to be blocked by Junior. "Ah! Where are you going? Your family now and Joy needs you. Come on, sister-in-law, get in the car." Sydney cried all the way to the cemetery, a mixture of sorrow and joy. May 1926-20. Juanita sat and brooded. Why were the children being so mean? Didn't they think she deserved happiness? She was making a list of things to do. She thought it odd that she couldn't find any paperwork she needed in his little office. When she went to the bank and found the safety deposit box empty, she had a mild panic attack. She had especially wanted his grandmother's jewelry, something he refused to get out of the box except for special occasions. She planned on wearing most of it all the time. "Calm down," she told herself. "Phil probably knows where everything is. It'll all come out at the reading of the will. Then I'll take those snippy kids down a peg or two." The reading of the will be tomorrow. Josh had slipped over last night, and they spent 4 glorious hours together. He had taken the little blue pill, and they spent most of it in bed. She slept like a rock. She sat gingerly. He was becoming more demanding since she was no longer attached. She found it charming. He had bit her breasts and thighs, leaving marks that couldn't be seen, marks that declared her his. After the will was read and she found out just how much she had, and he got his divorce, they were selling out and leaving town. Monday afternoon, 5/23/20. Juanita actually had a spring in her step as she approached the office of Ann Johnson. It seemed odd at first that Phil didn't handle the will, but upon reflection she realized it made sense, avoiding conflict of interest. She was greeted and ushered into a conference room. Ann came in and introduced herself. Juanita could feel her disdain in her voice and mannerism. It didn't matter. In an hour or 2 she would never have to see you again. "Mrs. Childers, I am instructed by the terms of the will to have you view this video. It will answer a lot of questions before the actual reading of the will. It should take a little over 30 minutes. When you're done, have my receptionist get me and we'll gather with the rest of the family to read the will. If you need water or anything else, she will get it for you." With that, Ann left the room. "Gee, what's the problem?" she thought. "I guess I need to hear hubby's last words." She had to admit, she missed him more than she thought she would. Even if she didn't exactly love him like she should, she was attentive to most of his needs. He made her feel safe and comfortable. Lately the big farmhouse seemed too empty, and the creaks and groans of an old house settling as the temperature changed kind of unnerved her. Odd she had never noticed that while he was alive. She started the video. His face filled the screen. Juanita, if you're watching this, I'm already in the rest home. 2 years. And you never noticed me degenerating. Oh well, I'm sure you had other things on your mind. She blushed. She had been a little self-centered. He continued. Things like sleeping with Josh Randall. Did you know he's probably the father of Joy? And Junior, I have no idea who his father is, but if you can remember, you need to tell him. If I've learned one thing from all this, it's that conditions like mine are genetically transferred. The knowledge should be helpful should he ever need a kidney, or something along that line. She paused the disc in panic. How had he found out? After getting her breathing under control, she restarted the disc, fearing the worst. It might be interesting for you to know that Ronnie is mine. She must have slipped through by accident. All these years I've loved you and you've been distant from me. I understand now. You know, I've never liked Josh. He's always seemed sleazy to me. Now I know I'm right. When I found out, I paid a firm to get audio and pictures of you two together. Want to see and hear some excerpts? The screen was filled with a photo of Josh and her in a bed, naked, while an audio played. It was her giggling. Can you believe how clueless they are? 20 years and they don't suspect a thing. I feel bad for them really, especially your wife. It's going to hurt her pretty bad to get the divorce papers. At least the kids are out of the house. She heard Josh laugh. She'll be all right. She can move in with her mother while we sell the house and split the money. Lord knows she can't afford to live there by herself. And your husband, that's the one who'll really get hurt. When you have him served and asked for 70%, he'll probably have a heart attack. She heard her voice again. You know I'll probably only get 50%, but that's a healthy chunk. Enough, with your retirement coming up in a year and early Social Security, to last us the rest of our lives. I've always wanted to go to Europe and Scotland. Let's start there and see where it goes. Then they went into intimacy talk and she could hear herself slurping while Josh urged her on. Oh baby, just like that. I'm close, baby, close. I'm gonna pull out, baby, give you a pearl necklace. She was mortified, sitting there listening to herself. The picture had changed into a slideshow of her and Josh together in different positions. They faded into the face of her husband. She had never seen such an angry look on his face. I wondered, if you found me so lacking, why didn't you leave? Then I discovered it was all about the money. Now, honey, seeing you hold me in such high regard, I thought it only fair to return the favor. My new will is ironclad, but if you want to spend resources you're really not going to have, feel free to try and break it. All my insurance policies now have our children listed as beneficiaries. You'll get nothing should I die. I prepaid for the funeral, so you won't be burdened with that debt. I sold the farm, all but 20 acres and the house and buildings, to that developer who's been after me for years. It was mine before we were married, and my dad had it tied up in a trust that couldn't be broken, unless I decided to sell. He tried to get me to reduce the price because of the economy, but I told him I had given him first choice, and if he didn't want to pay the price, I would list it. He buckled and gave me full price. I moved everything out of the safety deposit box, took all the savings except $10,000, all the bonds and investments, and moved them to another bank and had the account put in Ronnie's name. If she feels like you deserve more, she'll give it to you. Her head was reeling. What had he done? I know you probably won't like living in that 5-bedroom house by yourself, so I did you a favor. I paid off the Junior's house. You and he will be switching. He needs more room with the baby coming, and his little 2-bedroom ought to suit you just fine. You don't have to thank me. Oh, and don't try to fight it. Ronnie is my executor along with Anne, and they'll have you evicted. No, this way you can act like a thoughtful mother and be a hero. The proceeds from the sale of the land went into trust funds, divided equally between the 3 kids. If they feel like giving you some of it, it's up to them. I assure you, everything I've done has been carefully assessed and totally legal. Like I said before, fight it if you want. Also, if you try to divorce me, or try to get hold of my finances by declaring me mentally incompetent, it's too late. I had myself declared incompetent a year ago, and named Ronnie, my guardian. He rested his head on his hands on the screen. When he looked up, she could see the tears. I don't know why you didn't love me, guess I never will. But you gave me a few good memories and 3 great kids. That's why I'm leaving you enough to retire in comfort. But be aware, should you blow the money on, say, trips to Europe, when it's gone it won't be replaced. Finally, I gave strict instructions that you were not to be placed on my visitors list at the rest home. I want what few memories I have left to be pleasant ones. Goodbye, Juanita. He sat for a moment and then added an afterthought. By the time I'm gone, you will have received a few surprises I left for you. Take them in the spirit they were given. The video froze on his face, a look of despair and anger on his face. She lay her head on the table and wept. She didn't stay for the reading of the will. She couldn't see the point. Ronnie saw the looks of surprise on her siblings. Each of them were moderately wealthy. If they were conservative and lived within their means, they could provide the best for their children and live comfortably in their retirement. Ronnie had no mercy on her mother, making her stick to the instructions in his will. After a month, she and Junior swapped houses. It did make her look like a thoughtful mother, and she did admit she liked the little house. It was so much easier to take care of. She lived quietly. Friday afternoon, 6/22/20. Juanita wondered what her boss wanted. She hardly ever asked anyone to come there, preferring to move about the building, talking while she supervised. She looked back on her job. She wanted to go to work after Joy was born. She told David she was feeling bored. They didn't need the money, and she assured him it was just something she wanted to do. Of course he agreed, wanting to make her happy. She soon found that there wasn't a lot out there for a high school dropout. She couldn't see the sense of staying in school since she was going to marry David just as soon as she turned 18. David actually got her the job. His cousin owned the rest home. It was housekeeping and didn't pay a lot, but she had always liked to clean. She slowly moved up until she was housekeeping supervisor. One of the perks of the job was the retirement program. If you stayed 20 years, you could retire at 3/4 pay after the age of 60. Juanita was past 60 but needed 15 more months to vest. It would coincide with her taking early retirement. She was surprised to see Josh there. They had hit a bit of a rough spot when she found out she wasn't going to inherit much. He still slipped over from time to time, but he never talked of a future together anymore, saying Hay should cool it for a while, let things blow over. The intimacy had gotten rougher too. She wasn't comfortable with it, and things came to a head when he wanted to make it really rough. When she refused, he stormed out, and they hadn't gotten together since. "Josh, what are you doing here?" He shrugged. "Dunno, she said be here at 3, so here I am. Think it has something to do with our playtimes." She had gotten him his job there 16 years ago, as one of 3 groundskeeper to maintenance men the home employed. Mona, the owner, called them into the office and shut the door. She sat and looked at them for a moment before slamming a file on the desk. "You idiots, do you know how dangerous what you've been doing was to my business? If the state inspectors had caught you having love in one of those empty rooms, I could have lost my license. And Juanita, at your age, what were you thinking?" They sat there stunned. How had she found out? They were very careful. When a room was available, she did the final inspection, and had a maintenance man, guess who, go over it before releasing it to be occupied again. They had some of their hottest intimacy there, quickies mostly, with an occasional head job. The fact that there was a remote possibility they could get caught heightened the excitement. Mona flipped a few pages out of the file, 2 of them having love, her uniform skirt flipped up and his pants around his ankles, and one of her on her knees. While he leaned against a dresser with a blissful look on his face, there was little doubt what was happening. "Just so you know, these are legal. There's a notice in every hallway about video cameras in use. This one is special. I put it in the room after David talked to me, and removed it before a resident moved in. I just wanted you to know I had these, just so you wouldn't put up too much of a fuss over what's about to happen. Josh, I'm sorry to inform you, due to the recent economic downturn, I'm going to have to lay you off. I wish you the best in future employment. Do not expect a recommendation." Josh exploded. "What? You can't do that. I have 8 years on the last guy, and I've only got 4 years to go to get vested. You can't do this to me." Mona sighed. "All right, if that's the way you want it. Josh Randall, you are hereby terminated for flagrant violations of the morality clause covered in our employee rules of conduct. I note that in your file is a copy of the rules with your signature, noting that you read and understood these rules. Please leave the property immediately. And Josh, these photos will find their way to your wife somehow. Still don't want me to lay you off?" Josh sagged back in the chair, defeated. "Yes, ma'am, I'll accept the layoff." Mona smiled. "Good. At least unemployment will give you some income while you try to find another job. Please leave now and never come back on this property. Are we clear?" He nodded and left without saying another word. Juanita sat there stunned, fearing her fate. Mona barely concealed her hatred. "Juanita, let me tell you what a stupid idiot you are. My first inclination was to fire you when David showed me the pictures. I was hesitant to put the camera up, but admit it was an act of self-preservation. You need to get on your knees and thank God David didn't want you fired. After he explained what he wanted, it gave me a greater respect for him." She sat back and looked at her severely. "Juanita Childers, in light of recent activities, I am removing you from your supervisory position and demoting you to part-time. From now on, you are allowed 2 days a week, on Friday and Saturday. You know what a hard time we have getting people to work the weekends? This solves all our problems. You get to keep your job, and I get reliable help on the weekends." Juanita broke into tears. Mona slapped the folder down again. "If this isn't acceptable, you can always quit, but think about it. This way you get to keep your job and still earn your retirement. Since it's based on hours and you're going from 40 to 16, it'll take you until you're 67 to vest, but it's not like you're going on pleasure cruises or traveling soon. Now is it? Take it or leave it, Juanita, but I need your answer right now." Juanita was trapped and knew it, so she agreed. Mona felt a little pity for her. "It's not that bad. You can still retire next year and work. Your pay won't even affect what you draw. If you behave yourself in a year or so, I'll give you more hours." Excerpts from the Goodbye DVDs. Joy. His face filled the screen. He had a big smile on his face. "Joy, Joy, did I ever tell you why I called you that? It was because you gave me twice the joy in my middle years than I deserved. Your mother got to name the other two, but I insisted on your name, Joy Elizabeth. Elizabeth was in honor of your great-grandmother. I wish you could have met her. You gave me a great gift. Ronnie was so much older than you, it was like I got a first daughter all over again. I can't tell you how many times you lived up to your name over the years. Every time I felt low, you were always there to cheer me up. I can't tell you how sad I was when you went off to college, but it's life. It was time for you to start seeking your own destiny." His face got serious. "Joy, Joy, I need you to understand something. No matter what some lines on a test say, you're mine, my baby girl, and you always will be. If you've never believed anything else I've ever told you, believe this. I love you dearly, my daughter." He paused, still looking serious. "Speaking of love, baby, everyone knows you're gay. Even as clueless as Junior is, even he figured it out. I knew when you were 13, and I found your brother's old Playboys and other skin magazines where you hid them in the barn. I knew when you and Sydney got together your junior year and went to the prom together, saying you couldn't find boys interesting enough to take you. You even bought corsages for each other. It was no surprise you guys went to the same college and shared a 2-bedroom apartment. You don't know how many times I wanted to tell you to stop fooling around and get a 1-bedroom, until I visited you and saw you guys had turned the other bedroom into a study room. So stop goofing around and come out. We'll all act surprised if you want us to." He added it as an afterthought, not to be surprised if her mother doesn't take it well. "That being said, I'm glad Sydney is an economics major. Let her keep up with the money I'm giving you. Artists aren't generally known for their keen business sense. I'm glad you're going to be an artist. You have a rare gift. Your paintings are like snapshots of a soul. Remember that pencil sketch you made of you and I, when you were 10 of us walking across the field with the 2 boxers I had at the time? That's when I knew what a talent you were. If you remember, the next month I started your art lessons. I framed that sketch. It had a place of honor on the wall right across from my desk. It's in my will that when I pass it is to be placed in my casket with me, along with the baseball junior hit to win the county championship, and the first place certificate Ronnie got in the regional science and math fair. I'm so proud of all of you." There was more, but she couldn't stand to finish then. Jane. "Jane, I need you to do something for me. Watch over Junior. He's a gentle soul and has always been partial to his mother. That's why what I'm leaving you to is in both your names. If he's not careful, she'll wheedle most of what I give you away from him. By now you should be living in our old house. It was built by my grandfather, but I kept it up and added improvements. It's a house used to the sounds of children, so you should be happy you're there. I know things were a little rough for you too, with you being laid off and his horse being cut. I have a request. You should have ample money for you to go back to school and finish your degree. If you do, Ronnie has a spot waiting for you, maybe even a partnership down the line. Junior has always been a mechanic at heart. Try to get him to go to diesel school. The work is more steady and he won't be gone overnight anymore. I've redone one of the farm sheds and fixed it up. All he has to do is go to work when he gets his certificate. There's always work for a good mechanic. I want Bobby to have my truck. It's a little old, but it's in good shape and doesn't have many miles on it. He's 15. He'll be driving soon. Give little Dave the farm equipment. He was the one most likely to be a farmer. I left you enough acres he can do some experimenting with, just to see if he likes it. I also want you to give him Elvis. He's dumb as a rock, but he's loyal, and he and Dave have always gotten along. I'm sorry I won't get to see them become adults, and I want you to promise me in your soul that when your little girl is born, you will bring her to see me. I hope you have a good life. Watch out for your family for me. Oh, and don't get stupid and name your daughter Davida. I don't like the way it sounds. Sydney. Well, I did it, girl. Force Joy to come out. Treat her well, give her the love she needs. Look out for her. You know she's an idiot when it comes to practical matters, especially money. I know you're the dominant one in the relationship, so the burden falls to you. And Sid, I'm glad she found you. I hope your lives turn out well. And come see me, Sid, just you occasionally, so we can get to know each other better. 2 years later, 5/16/22, 8 adults, 7 children, 10 tents. It looked like a band of gypsies had descended on the campground. They ate breakfast the next morning, the 3 adults cooking lost count of the pancakes and sausage they cooked. The cooks rested while everyone else cleaned. The kids who were small enough played in the creek under watchful eyes, while the 2 teen girls and 2 teen boys wandered off in search of people their own age. They ate a light lunch and started packing backpacks and boxes. Soon the whole group was filling up the hill in a column, slowly enough the children could keep up. A little 18-month-old girl was handed from adult to adult as they tired. 40 minutes later, they arrived at Baker's Point. There was a 42-inch wall on the drop side, and warnings were posted. The wall had a plaque near the end. In honor of David Childers, who accidentally fell from here 4/14/11, erected by his children in his honor. Rest in peace, Dad. Soon 2 small tents were erected, and there was a bustle among the females. Soon the strains of a string quartet were heard, and 5 minutes later the wedding march commenced. Joy emerged from one tent, Sydney from the other. They were dressed in identical white dresses and carried matching bouquets. They walked towards the makeshift altar with Ronnie, Jane, and their daughters on one side, and Phil Jr. and his sons and the 2 small sons of their preacher on the other. The preacher and his wife stood at the makeshift altar. When the music stopped, the ceremony began. When the Reverend asked, "Who gives this woman in marriage?" Joy looked at the portrait carefully placed beside her. "My father does," she said in a calm, confident voice. For the rest of her life as an acclaimed artist, if she was ever asked what she considered her masterpiece, she would point it out. Portrait of me and my father showed a pale blue sky beating down on a finely furrowed field. A little blonde girl, around 6 years old, was holding a man's hand and looking up at him. You could see the love in her eyes. She was barefoot, wearing a little white shift. You could see the dirt stains on the tail. The man was looking down, smiling. He was wearing boots, overalls, and a dirty white t-shirt. His bald head was gleaming in the sunlight. 2 boxers pranced around the pair, kicking up small puffs of dirt. She had won 3 awards with it and had several very lucrative offers to buy it, but she could never part with it. After the ceremony and the hugs and kisses, the others started repacking everything. Ronnie, Phil, Joy, Sydney, Jane, and Junior took a small cooler and walked to the end of the point. The cooler contained flower petals, which Joy, Ronnie, and Junior tossed over the wall and down into the water. The spouses stood back and watched, then hugged each in turn before heading back. Elvis couldn't wait to get back down the trail. Little Dave, now 6 feet tall, held him firmly as he whined. He petted him. "I know, Elvis, we all miss him," Juanita found out 3 months later when one of the grandchildren let it slip. Joy hadn't spoken to her since the funeral.